Hey there, everybody. Dr. JP Guidry here. Hope everybody's doing well out there today. I want to talk a little bit about neck pain and kind of just an introduction to neck pain and pain in general. And then I will share some videos as well on exercises you can do to address both acute neck pain as well as preventing and minimizing neck pain in the future. So neck pain in itself is a very common experience, especially for those whose jobs require a lot of sitting, a lot of computer work, telephone usage, driving, or lifting. How we manage that neck pain, especially in acute onset situations, can determine how big of an effect it can have on our lives. Even persistent or long-term neck pain can be reduced and better managed, allowing people who suffer with it to lead normal lives and return to meaningful activities and work. I will add the disclaimer onto this that as we get into this, this is not medical advice but educational material only. If you feel like you've suffered a significant injury, have serious symptoms of a serious medical event, contact your doctor immediately. Go to your ER before doing any type of exercise. So let's talk a little bit about pain itself. So pain is a very individualized experience. According to the great Lorimer Moseley, who's a well-established pain researcher, there are 4 key points we need to keep in mind when it comes to pain. Pain itself does not provide an accurate measure of the state of the tissues. So what this means is that the level of your pain does not parallel the level of damage, or if there's any damage at all in the tissues. So you can have a high level of pain and minimal to no damage, and vice versa. You can have a high level of damage and minimal to no pain. And there are plenty of examples of this on both sides. Pain is an output of the brain that's modulated by many factors across biomechanical, somatic, psychological, and social domains. So what this means is things like actual tissue damage does come into play, but also things like stress, fear, anxiety, memories, relationships, sleep, our overall health and well-being can all have an effect on the level of pain we feel, and will differ obviously from person to person in each individual's life experiences. The relationship between pain and the state of the tissues becomes less predictable as pain persists. So what this means is the more chronic, the more persistent the pain is in nature, the less likely it is due to solely due to tissue damage. So there's probably a lot more factors involved. The more acute it is, the more likely it is to be due to some kind of tissue strain, potential damage, irritation, inflammation, things like that. Pain can be conceptualized as a conscious correlate of the implicit perception that the tissue is in danger. So it's kind of a wordy way of saying our pain is an alarm system. It tells them something might be going on or has already happened that is harmful to our body. It's a call to action. So it's basically a call to do something different. So if we're doing an activity and we have pain, it's to maybe stop or modify that activity. If we're sitting, maybe that's a call to get up and move around, so on and so forth. So it's an alarm. It's kind of something to tell us to dig a little deeper and figure out what's going on. So there are some symptoms we look for when it comes to neck pain that can be indicative of something more serious. So if you experience the following symptoms, make that change, then it's best to get evaluated by a medical professional. So these are loss of bowel or bladder control, severe weakness, numbness, or tingling in the upper or lower extremities, unexpected weight loss, nausea, vomiting, fever, pain, especially severe pain that does not change with rest or change in position or activity, and any other unexpected signs or symptoms. So if you experience any of these things, don't hesitate to let your doctor know before you start on any exercise program. So what do we do if we experience an acute episode or flare-up of neck pain? So for the most part, number one, don't freak out. Okay, for the most part, neck pain and most pain in general, unless you've had a traumatic injury, is rarely associated with serious pathology or structural damage. It's influenced, as we talked about, by a number of factors, including activity levels, sleep patterns, fear, mood, worry, and stress, habitual postures, and overall strength and conditioning levels. So that doesn't mean we necessarily need to rush off to get a scan, an x-ray, and MRI right away. A lot of times the findings on these scans can be normal in people with and without pain, and the findings that you do find don't necessarily correlate with the pain you're experiencing. So now if you're experiencing some of those symptoms we talked about before, then that may be where those things are maybe more part of the puzzle early on. Number 2 is move early, move often. So gentle movement early on in the process that does not increase any symptoms is key. While there's no such thing as an ideal posture, it's a bit of a misnomer, varying postures throughout the day and avoiding aggravating postures early on can help. Rest, true avoidance of activity, and taking a lot of time off are generally not helpful for neck pain in the long run, but you may want to cut back on some strenuous activities until the symptoms have calmed down. The goal is to be able to return back to those normal activities as soon as possible and only stop or modify the things that you need to. So, how we maintain our overall health will have a play in better outcomes for our acute neck pain as well as any pain we experience in the future. So, regular physical activity, maintaining positive mindset about neck pain, pain in general, maintaining good sleep patterns, healthy stress management, good relationships, healthy relationships, all those things, and just maintaining overall cardiovascular health can lead to better outcomes for neck pain. So participating in a consistent strength and conditioning and an exercise program for the entire body will not only prepare your body to tolerate more loads, so be less likely for you to get injured, but be beneficial to your overall health and well-being as well. Lastly, if all else fails, get help. If your pain doesn't improve in a reasonable time frame, if you've kind of gone through the steps above, then seek out a qualified medical professional to help guide you through the healing and recovery process. The main thing is not to freak out. Make the changes you need to change. Try to stay as active as you can, and if you need help, seek it. So when we talk about recovery, I like to simplify the processes for neck pain and really most pain into 2 phases: the calming things down phase and the building back up phase. And I've kind of borrowed this from a colleague of mine, Greg Lehman. And for me, it really simplifies how we approach this. So early on is the calming down phase. So that's when we want to reduce the symptoms. We want to avoid and modify things that aggravate or cause or increase symptoms and still continue to move and be active as we can. So for the neck, we're going to focus on reducing pain via gentle movement, isometrics, using things also like ice, heat, tinge units, things like that, acutely to calm things down. And then if needed, a temporary restriction of aggravating factors. This phase will be focused on the gentle movement, calming measures with the sole goal of calming down your symptoms. This is a good time, if needed, to back off any aggravating activities, positions, movements, but on a very temporary basis, and again, trying to only do that when necessary. Finding a few good exercises that you enjoy and pain relieving measures that work for you, and just stick to those for the time being until your pain has gotten under control, and then you can start to expand back to your normal activities and normal exercise. Phase 2, so this is what we call the building back up phase. So this is when we've got the symptoms under control, and we're going to work on loading the body and loading the neck in a safe manner and returning back to your normal activities. So it will be focused on building and restoring strength, mobility, endurance, and return back to full pain-free function. We still don't want to force any exercises that aggravate your symptoms, but we can be a little more aggressive in this phase. It's not necessarily uncommon to have a little flare-up or maybe take a step back or kind of flow in and out of phase 1 and phase 2 early on. So if you have a little flare-up, it's okay to regress back to phase 1 for a few days, and then to try to progress back to phase 2 as soon as possible. The time frames of these phases will definitely differ from person to person, episode to episode. Nature of the injury and all those factors we talked about beforehand will have an effect on that. Listen to your body, let the pain kind of guide you. The goal is to progress to phase 2 and back to normal activity as soon as tolerable. And then, but while not kind of creating increased pain or aggravating things or flaring things up. So some pain throughout this process is normal. We just want to minimize the amount of those flare-ups that we can get. So a few notes on exercise programs before you get started with anything. Don't do any exercises that increase or exacerbate your symptoms early on, especially. Sets and reps that are given are just a guide, and you can adjust based on how you feel. So if the dose given to you is 3 sets of 10 and you can only get 5 in the start, then start with 5. Don't force the number. Do what feels right to you, and then try to progress towards the number that's given to you. Move slowly and purposely through each movement as you feel better. Push towards the edge of pain, tension, or discomfort, and then back off. And make sure you breathe. We have a tendency to hold our breath when there's pain or tension involved, so breathing can allow us to kind of move easier throughout the exercises, throughout the movements. So in conclusion, if you experience neck pain, understand that it is normal and very common, especially with certain job types, job requirements, and positions. Non-traumatic neck pain is very rarely related to actual tissue damage, but is more of a protective response of the body from overloading and overstressing certain tissues. In the beginning of an acute flare-up or acute episode, focus on staying active while avoiding aggravating activities, and focus on pain-relieving exercises and techniques. Once that pain calms down, then you slowly start to resume normal activities and return back to a normal exercise program to restore strength, mobility, function, and overall health. And while it is impossible to 100% eliminate risk of injury or pain, maintaining health, maintaining strength, maintaining mobility moving forward will help minimize the risk of pain and injury long term. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at John Paul, JOHNPAUL, at Guidry, GUIDRY, PT.com. And as I said, I will also be putting together some videos of exercises for both phase 1, the calming phase, and then phase 2, the building back up phase.